I definitely am in my last 3 slides now. I thought I would just give the audience, the learners out here,
yes,
things to consider. So one is to think and reflect on your own students. These general principles are great. However, it's really important, as I demonstrated earlier, that to have the most impact, teachers generally know their own students. So if you just think and reflect upon what their learning needs are, their styles and preferences, specifically related to e-learning. So you're probably already doing it as a teacher, but if you want them to collaborate, for example, if you use a particular tool, you might think, well, how would I set that up? How would that work? Are they going to use it? Is it going to be too complicated? Are there logins required? All this, every practical element. And then you might, this is where the design process starts, way before you deliver. You might analyse and design a lesson that you think might work as e-learning. And again, it can be something really, really small. It doesn't need to be a 3-year e-learning extravaganza. It can be just something like a little tweak to an online Zoom lesson that you're already doing that might work, might give you a bit of breathing space and meet your learner needs more effectively. So the second one is I would encourage you to explore the ADDIE model. Now, there's no right or wrong with the ADDIE model. And as I said earlier, the iterative approaches are really, really important. So it's okay to experiment. It's okay to revisit. It's okay to amend. So I've been designing for many, many years, and I'm still learning. I'm still amending.
Mm-hmm.
I had my heart set on developing learning materials with cassette tapes 25 years ago, but guess what? I had to change. The technology changed, although it is becoming a little retro now. So, but I guess the technology is always going to change. So you don't need to get it perfect the first time. Stuff's going to change anyway. And I guess that's one of the big things from last year is that change was thrust upon teachers and they needed to engage with this space. So with that in mind, it's kind of, I'd encourage you to look for opportunities to maybe expand your existing lessons with some digital tools and technologies, maybe some of those in the SAMR framework. And you can just do a quick search online for that. That's research from many years ago. And the technology, in fact, a lot of those pieces of technology, they're probably out of date, but there's new ones coming in all the time. It's good to critically assess the suitability of technology for learning and teaching as well. But hopefully people can come up with some meaningful and engaging activities, maybe incorporate some student reflection. Is it as an individual or as a group? That might be something that's quite suitable. That seems to be have emerged. That thinking has emerged a lot more recently. Practical application of knowledge and skills, as in real world use, that's always a good one to start to incorporate more. Also, sharing and critiquing and discussing student created work. That can be its own activity. Now, my final thing to consider is emphasising the need for professional learning opportunities like this one. We're currently participating right in here, a professional learning opportunity. So there'll be people in the audience that already know some of this stuff, but hopefully there'll be people in the audience that this is new. It's giving them some new ideas. So I would encourage you to look for professional learning opportunities to further explore learning design. So there's a lot of stuff out there. And you might consider your skills and skill gaps or areas of technology that you don't know how to use that you feel might be suitable. The technology has its own intimidation. So, I guess it's where, but as I said, the cassette tape was going to be my thing. So VHS tapes as well. I had to change, and then I changed to DVDs. They were the new technology. I breathed a sigh of relief. I was on the cutting edge. And then sadly, those DVDs are just no longer relevant. So, a change comes with this territory, and with any change comes learning opportunities. So the learning for your students, but also professional learning. And you can, what are you learning about? You might want to learn about adult learning principles. That's getting very reflexive. You might want to learn about online learning frameworks or learning theories, or go further into research areas or learning platforms, or all these different things, even back to Zoom, better use of breakout rooms. They can be mundane or magnificent. It depends on, where you're at, but I definitely would encourage you to, professional learning is definitely sits very comfortably with this territory. So I think that's my final slide. I'm going to stop sharing my screen.
Awesome. Usually I'm a chatty kind of parrot, when these are going on, but you did such a great job running through those. I didn't want to break your stride. The kind of piece of reflection, two pieces of reflection. We'll start with one. At the very end there was, I know from other speakers that we've been listening to, in the summit, and all, when I think about my colleagues out there, whether you're an elementary school teacher, higher ed, corporate learner, whatever, one of the biggest things is, oh my Lord, I am overwhelmed, right? Like I don't need to be a designer. I want to be a teacher, right? And so one of the things I've been encouraging, and I'd love to get your reflection is, don't be afraid to just ask for help, right? In terms of from your students, from your colleagues, maybe your institution has a designing, an instructional design resource that it can use or whatever, where you don't have to become a designer now as well. But using these principles, you can then, contribute to that process. I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Sometimes teachers, not all teachers, but sometimes teachers make the assumption they have to know everything. That's the role of the teacher. Like they stand at the front of the classroom and they just have to know the answer to every question. Whereas it's almost impossible now. There's so much change over the last 25 to 30 years with technology, communication, processes. The world is in such a state of flux. And so the teacher is not always central. It's kind of it's the sage on the stage versus the guide on the side. But that can be a bit of a kind of bit kind of confronting for some teachers. But yeah, I would actively encourage you to seek out collegial support. Is really important. As in, you might have a colleague and you might share a little project together, and you might have the same class, and you might say, okay, let's do this thing together. We've halved the workload, and then we can both use whatever we produce. So it's this nice collaborative process that is producing something. And so even better if you can tap into any specialist support. There is a thing, some students, a lot of teachers know this already, some students will know more than you, especially when it comes to technology. You can get that student and ask them to explain it to the class. How does this digital camera work? So there's a little piece of learning going on, but you're facilitating it. You're not giving them a free-for-all. They're not taking over. You're just kind of still in the role of the teacher, but you're outsourcing. You might even outsource production of, if you've designed something, you might get students to build it for you, and then you can check their work, and that might even be part of an assessment. So,
sure. And we've seen, Michelle Moore, who is one of our speakers last year, she's going to be on again this year as well. That was one of her key messages, was you can design almost entire learning experiences where you really are. I love the guide on the side. I actually really own that. I love that because being the sage puts a lot of responsibility on your shoulders. And it also sets you up for, especially that Gen Z universe where it's like, if you get it wrong and you're not talking their language or something like that, you could be shut down pretty quickly. Whereas if you're facilitating the conversation and you're supporting and you're asking them to say, hey, look, you show me how we build it and whatnot, you're achieving everyone's goals. You're creating that engagement, and you're all moving in the same direction there.
Correct. Yeah. So that's right. And that is where a knowledge of your curriculum comes in, because you might have all these different skills. You could be developing the students' skills as they work on like a project-based experience or something, like there's so many different options and ways to kind of construct learning or, opportunities for learning now more than ever. So, it's kind of, it's ushered in, I mean, from my perspective, I've got a bias But yeah, the last 12 months has ushered in a really exciting kind of lots of opportunities. And so, yeah, it's just kind of important not to be too overwhelmed. And you can seek out people that are already doing it, or, you know, there's sort of small professional development opportunities. But yeah, it has changed the, I mean, at universities is a bit of a thing because of the lecturer, often their research and they're presenting their own research, but then students might look it up and think, oh, okay, this other expert disagrees. So it can get quite confronting. So, you know, it's kind of like there's lots of noteworthy further discussion in this territory, definitely.
So last question for you to wrap it up. Here's a little challenge, and I mean this tongue in cheek, obviously. You showed us the cassette, and then we talked about the CD-ROM and the DVD, and, you know, obviously, you know, we're familiar with podcasts and video and whatnot. Where's the next 6 to 12 months, or maybe even 5 years? I mean, are we all going to have the VR headset on eventually? Is that what's going to happen? Or where do you see us going?
I think the VR headset, a good recent technology that's noteworthy is the 3D glasses. People don't necessarily like putting this on, or, you know, but some people will tolerate it. So I know there's a lot of interest in VR, and it's kind of reignited something that was happening in the 90s. So, you know, I guess I'm not sure. I see it as maybe, I personally, I've returned to more human interaction. And I kind of think, like this little moment we're having right now, this is an authentic human moment.
Absolutely.
So I kind of see the future is in this kind of space. Because technology, I mean, we're on the brink of AI, some highly significant AI developments where this sort of thing, like a video of someone talking, you can get an artificial intelligence version of that, and you can't, or you've got to look carefully. It's hard to tell. So I don't know. I just kind of see maybe a return to more human-centered processes, but using technology to facilitate those or something. I don't know. I think of Alice in the middle of the Zoom screen, you know, she's kind of central. So I think that's a kind of significant metaphor for a lot, really. We're all human beings. So it's kind of like driving, that should be the driver. That's not really answering the question. I can't give you a quantifiable technology.
I know. I love it. What I love is that I love that it really, no matter how you how you put it together, it's still going to be choose your own adventure, right? Some people are going to, my child, you know, my eldest right now, he can't get enough of VR. And I think his generation is going to let that. But for you and I'm the same as you. I would prefer to kind of maybe actually find myself in more real, authentic human experiences going forward, because that's where I draw energy from. That's where I find the most excitement. I love interacting with humans, right? And so that's where I do it. Where maybe as somebody who's more introverted is going to say, look, I don't want either of those. Give me the book. You know, I want to be in my head and I want to experience myself. So even 5 years from now, I still think there's going to be that choose your own adventure kind of scenario, which really just sort of leaves it, again, unfortunately puts it back on that sort of the ADDIE, model that you said, like, what's your context? Who's your learner? You know, what are the options that they need?
Yeah, well, you can customize it. Highly customizable pathways is definitely a thing that's been building for a while now. Just learner pathways, I mean. So, yeah, I definitely think that's going to strengthen over the next short while. Whether that involves cassette tapes or not, I can't be sure.
I hope it does, man. I hope it does. I'm going back to it. Mark, thank you so much. This has been absolutely fantastic. I hope that, depending on when the time zones are, I know you're in Sydney there, that you'll be able to contribute to the Slack chat. So people will have questions for you. Yes. They're probably asking them right now, as they're watching this. But we're going to be sharing your slides and whatnot. So I will encourage people to reach out to you as well with questions and to continue the conversation.
Cool. Thanks very much, Stephen.